All right, and we are live. Let me make sure it's going out okay on the old YouTubes because I'm by myself. Luke doesn't seem to be on, and I just feel like streaming, so I'm not too worried about it. So, trying to get some streaming here done before I gotta head out into the world and do my adult responsibilities for the day. All right, let's take a look at an article. So. There's a lot of problems in the comic book industry, as you might imagine. There's a few mainstream articles I've seen where they talk about it, and they want to blame it on everything but the problem. They want to blame it on the direct market. And for those of you unfamiliar with the old insider baseball here, direct market is referring to comic book stores. The place that kept the industry alive. No, that's somehow the problem. No, comic book stores aren't the problem. Oh, but they're so... There are these weird little stores where people don't know what they're doing. Oh, Luke is on. Okay, well, I'll send Luke a link. I didn't think he was on. But if he wants on, he can come on. But there are these weird little stores, and it's people don't know what to look for when they're in there, and there's all this dense continuity and all these other things that they whine about that aren't the problem. Think of how many things saw their height of popularity when there was already decades of pre-established continuity. Star Trek saw its height of popularity during TNG/DS9 times when there was already decades of continuity. Doctor Who, I'm no fan of Doctor Who, but Doctor Who saw its greatest popularity when there was decades of continuity, some of which was virtually inaccessible. I started reading Spider-Man in the mid-90s and Marvel in the mid-90s when there was already 30 years of solid continuity. More than that, really, because the Golden Age stuff kind of counted. And it was fine. It was easy to catch up, okay? There's plenty of ways to catch people up if they want to be caught up. So they blame that. They blame, they blame the fact that, there's, like, if you want to read Spider-Man, where do you start? There's so many monthly Spider-Man books. And so what? Okay, grab one that looks appealing to you and read it. It's actually kind of a good thing to have multiple, writers on a franchise, because then, there's bound to be at least one take that appeals to you. Again, I was reading Spider-Man. It was 4 monthly books. I didn't have a problem with it. Big fucking deal. Those are not the problems. Everybody wants to act like those are the problems. They're not the problems. Okay? There's plenty, especially now that you have the internet. Like, I got into these things when I had to rely on fucking trading cards and word of mouth and, that sort of thing to find out who's who. You're a mouse click. If you're like, who the hell is this character that showed up in this book? Fucking look at the name and Google it. How about that? It's pretty easy. That's not the problem. The problem is that the books suck. That's the problem. Nobody wants to address that problem because then they have to admit, with their liberal ideology. Yes, I love the pro-American Bulbasaur there. Fucking A. At least we're... Oh, you burgers. Oh, you burgers. You obese burgers with your Trump. Yeah, at least we're not Europe. But anyways, that's not the problem. The problem is that the books suck. That is the problem. All right. People go see an Avengers movie. They think it's cool. They think, oh, that Captain America guy, he's cool. And they go pick up an issue of Avengers, and Sam Wilson is Captain America, and he's lecturing you all about Black Lives Matter. That's the problem. Hell, the problem isn't even that Sam Wilson is Captain America. I don't even think that's the problem. Some people would point to that in and of itself. No, I think anybody with two fucking brain cells together, or to rub together, they might be disappointed. It might not be what they were looking for, but they would realize, okay, the books are at a different place than the movies, and for some reason, Sam Wilson has took over. Maybe you don't want to read that, but it's not going to be confusing, But the real reason you're not going to want to read it is because you open it up and he's lecturing you about Black Lives Matter shit. Here we have cat variants for various Marvel issues. That's fucking fair. That's what the primarily young men who are interested in the superhero genre are dying to get their hands on. Fucking cat variants. So along that vein, an article that really struck me, because I mean, I know why Marvel and DC are in the shitter. It's obvious. But an interesting thing is IDW is about ready to go tits up. Now, IDW is one of the leader, we call them indies. Basically, everything that isn't Marvel and DC is kind of referred to as indie in the comic book industry. I don't know if indie is even the proper term because it's primarily mainstream stuff they publish. But IDW does not actually own a thing as far as IPs, which I think will be interesting when we take a look at this article. IDW publishes creator-owned and licensed comics. That's not an uncommon business model. Dark Horse used to do the same thing, and Dark Horse was highly successful for a very long time. Dark Horse never owned a thing. They published creator-owned stuff such as Hellboy, Goon, Concrete. I think right now they're doing Black Hammer, creator-owned projects like that. And they published a lot of licensed stuff. Hellboy had the Terminator license, I think basically forever. Hellboy had what else am I thinking of? Hellboy had Star Wars. Hellboy had Star Wars for the longest time. Marvel originally did Star Wars comics early, like late 70s, early 80s kind of shit. But throughout the 90s and the 2000s, basically, anytime you got an old school Star Wars fan who's waxing nostalgic about the expanding universe that Disney killed, and he brings up a comic, odds are it was published at Star Wars or at Dark Horse. Dark Horse also published the Alien and Predator comics, still do to this day. Although who knows if that'll change because of Disney acquiring Fox. Anyways, Dark Horse made a lot of money throughout the years. And Dark Horse wasn't afraid to do crossovers. You see a Masked Batman crossover on here. It's a trade paperback of a bunch of Dark Horse DC crossovers. Dark Horse did a lot of crossovers with Alien and Predator. Several of which were DC ones, which actually, at least pre-Flashpoint, were part of the DC continuity. Like things would happen in those miniseries that would just then be addressed later on in the regular books. In fact, in the Sinestro Corps War, there's this big pan out of all these different aliens with yellow fear rings. And if you look closely, you can see a Predator and a Xenomorph with yellow rings. Like small enough so that they could get away with it kind of thing. Point is, Dark Horse made a lot of money throughout the years publishing, not owning a thing. It is a viable business strategy in the comic book industry. Give indie creators a platform to publish their own stuff, get the licenses to popular IPs, publish comics based on them, and you make money. It's been a pretty easy way to make money. Hell, licensed comics has kept some companies afloat. While Archie, for reasons no one quite understands, recently got rid of all their licenses. For the longest time, books like TMNT Adventures and Sonic the Hedgehog were the main moneymakers for them. Well, IDW is another one. Is a company that owns nothing, just licenses and just create their own shit, and they are hemorrhaging money. And just to put this in perspective of the licenses they own, they have basically everything Hasbro. So right there, you're talking Transformers, G.I. Joe, My Little Pony, Gem, and the holograms. Some lesser-known shit like Micronauts and Mask, and I think they have the GoBots license, but I can't remember if that's Hasbro or not. They have licenses for Back to the Future. They've published a lot of Back to the Future comics. I've not read them personally. A buddy of mine is a huge Back to the Future fan, and he raves about them. They publish, as I've mentioned numerous times on here, Ghostbusters comics, which have been, all the ones I've read at least, have been fantastic. They publish Star Trek, and they published a lot of good Star Trek comics here the last couple of years. The stuff I've recommended. They did a couple of miniseries based on sort of mirror universe TNG stuff, which was really good. They've done a lot of crossovers, sometimes with other companies, sometimes not, of Star Trek and different IPs. There's been a Star Trek Transformers comic, a Star Trek Planet of the Apes, a couple of Star Trek Green Lanterns, a Star Trek Legion of Superheroes, stuff like that. A lot of crossovers. IDW loves doing crossovers. They have Ninja Turtles license. Again, they've done 3 crossovers with Batman. Coming up on a 4th. 3 regular ones and then a Batman TMNT Adventures. And they've done crossovers, Ninja Turtles, with stuff they have the rights to, such as Ghostbusters. So, again, tons of licensed stuff. TMNT, Back to the Future, Star Trek. They have a limited amount of Star Wars and Marvel stuff, oddly enough. Showing that it has no faith in the comic book company it actually owns. Disney has started to move a little bit of Star Wars stuff over to IDW, primarily the kid-friendly stuff. And they've moved a couple of Marvel properties over just to publish kid-friendly Marvel action books of Spider-Man and Avengers and Black Panther. They also have a number of Disney properties. Things like DuckTales, Donald Duck, Mickey Mouse, Disney Afternoon, throwback titles, Darkwing Duck, stuff like that. So again, licenses out the ass of stuff that is big name stuff and sells. Or at least I would think it would sell. However, IDW has a SJW problem. I know a lot of G.I. Joe fans have complained about what's going on in the G.I. Joe books. I've heard Transformers fans have similar complaints. Most of what I've read at IDW has been the crossover type stuff, because those are just usually fun. IDW has a Sonic the Hedgehog license, too. That just came to mind. It's not as good as the Archie book, though, but nonetheless, there it is. Anyways, I haven't read a lot of the ongoing stuff. Except for Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters is solid. I give it my stamp of approval. But even there, they fuck up a little bit. Ghostbusters, for example, interdimensional stuff is just a part of the Ghostbusters comic at this point. The multiverse aspect of it. It started with a crossover with the Ninja Turtles, the plot being there that Donatello builds a teleporter, the teleporter goes wrong, it sends them to the Ghostbusters universe. So Donatello and Egon, as there's other plots going on, have to figure out a way to rebuild this interdimensional device, get the turtles home. So after that just becomes continuity within the Ghostbusters comic, and Egon now just knows A, that parallel universes exist, B, how to access them. So from there, you see crossovers with like a Ghostbuster crossover where it's the comic universe and then the old 80s cartoon universe. Then they did a crossover with the shitty 2016 Ghostbusters, which is actually kind of funny because the writer very clearly hates them. He treats them like shit and writes them like assholes in the book. Then they did another big crossover. It was a whole bunch of Ghostbusters universes, not just those 3 that I mentioned. But unfortunately, IDW at one point insisted, let's have an on. Now, remember, the ongoing comic of the Ghostbusters kind of came to an end, and then it was just these miniseries. But we ended up with an ongoing comic of the Ghostbusters that was the fucking 2016 Ghostbusters. They did an ongoing Ghostbusters Answer the Call comic for about. So we're not doing regular Ghostbusters, but we're doing the shitty one that no one likes, that won't sell. That's the kind of mismanagement I think that is killing IDW. And that's the only Ghostbusters stuff I won't touch at IDW, because I can tolerate them being guest stars in the regular Ghostbusters comic, but I'm not reading a comic based just on them. That's fucking stupid. That said, though, for the most part, the Ghostbusters stuff has been really good. The questionable decision of giving the spotlight to that notwithstanding. That said, though, I've heard a lot of people complain about what's going on at G.I. Joe. I think like Snake Eyes died and he's been replaced by a Hispanic woman. I think over at Transformers, there was like something about a transgender fucking robot or something. Like, what the fuck? So I've primarily read Ghostbusters and I've read the crossover stuff at IDW because that's always fun. When you're doing a crossover, usually the writers they want to spotlight things in the best, in the best and purest form, because obviously you're contrasting two different franchises. So those usually end up turning out pretty good. But the regular G.I. Joe comic, I don't know. It sounds terrible. I think the last G.I. Joe stuff I read at IDW was a G.I. Joe $6 Million Man crossover they did with Dynamite Has the Rights to $6 Million Man. And that was actually pretty damn fun and good. But again, crossovers tend to be that way. So I go over all this minutia that some of you are probably bored to tears with to point out the fact that IDW is in a position where they could be basically printing money. Okay? People still like G.I. Joe. People still like Ninja Turtles. People love Back to the Future. People love Ghostbusters. People love all these damn things that they have the licenses to. Okay? I'm sure the My Little Pony comics sold like fucking hotcakes a few years ago. That trend has thankfully died down. But I'm sure that printed them money. Now, there's two problems here that I freely admit I may not understand. One is how much do these licenses cost them? When they approach Hasbro or whoever owns Star Trek, whoever owns Ghostbusters, whoever owns whatever, how much does it cost them for the permission to produce these comics? That can sometimes be worth more than you'll make. A famous example of this is in the 70s, Marvel published a Godzilla comic. This Godzilla comic was actually sold really well. It took place in the Marvel Universe. Interestingly enough, is still continuity to this day. Even if they won't mention the name Godzilla, they reference the events all the time. But it took place in the Marvel Universe. The only monster they had the rights to was Godzilla. None of the other Toho monsters. So they shoehorned him in the Marvel Universe. They did 24 issues worth. Solid stuff. Sold really well. Was completely unprofitable because Toho had charged them so much for the license.
If you're not making money hand over fist, something's terribly wrong.
So I will freely admit that part of IDW's problem may be that they have poorly negotiated these licenses, and maybe these licenses have cost them too much. That could be the problem. A lot of these probably not. Okay, G.I. Joe and the Hasbro stuff, for example, that's always been the main thing keeping these properties alive when the various cartoons or movies come and go. I doubt Hasbro charges an arm and a leg for the licenses. Maybe some of the other stuff does. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the Ghostbusters stuff was really expensive. Maybe the Back to the Future stuff was really expensive, because I know that sold really well, but didn't stick around. Who knows? Interestingly enough, IDW has the license to Godzilla, so who knows if they're paying too much for that. Obviously, Marvel wasn't able to secure a great deal for it back in the 70s, but who knows? So I will freely admit that part of the problem could be IDW is not negotiating well with these licenses. However, I suspect that is not even most of the problem. By the way, again, I have not read it personally. I have a friend of mine who absolutely adores Back to the Future, and he has said that comic was amazing. So if you like Back to the Future, those are available in trade paperback. I suggest, checking them out. Somebody says G.I. Joe had a gay psychopath as a writer a few years ago. I don't doubt it. There's problems like that at IDW, and I suspect that's the main problem. But again, it could be something as simple as non-politically motivated business mismanagement. I'm reminded of back in 2003 into 2004, like late 2002 into early 2004, basically, just over barely 2 years. There was a company called Dreamwave that had spun off Image. Pat Lee, I believe, was the artist, and then his brother, the Lee brothers, they were running it. This company was horrifyingly mismanaged, and they were in a prime position. They were doing Transformers comics. They had the licenses for Transformers. I believe for G.I. Joe, though I'm not 100% on that. I know they had the licenses for TMNT. I know they had the licenses for Street Fighter. And I know they had the license for Mega Man. In fact, I believe the 4 issues of Mega Man they managed to pump out were I want to say they were the first American Mega Man comics. Maybe if you're counting like he appeared in a Nintendo Power issue in the comic section of it or something, I don't know. But as far as I know, that was the first Mega Man comics published in America. 4 issues that he put out. That company put out, I should say. And at the end of those 4 issues actually teases a Mega Man X comic that never came to be. Because they were incredibly mismanaged. They weren't paying people. There was a lot of creators that got stiffed working for that company. That company ended up folding up in a hurry. And again, I want to point out, yeah, they had Mega Man and Street Fighter. That's interesting. But they had G.I. Joe. That's actually the Archie Mega Man comic you're bringing up, but which was a far better property, a far better comic. Look up Dreamwave Mega Man or 04 Mega Man, something like that. So they had like TMNT. TMNT was getting very, very hot again because that's the one. Because the new cartoon had just come out. Also, around 03, there was a massive 80s revival. Massive. So books like Transformers, TMNT, G.I. Joe, what have you, they sold like a candy-coated AIDS cure in San Francisco. All right. They sold out the ass. All right. Dreamwave was printing money, was dominating the sales charts. And though in 03, sales weren't that great because we were still recovering from the crash, but they were picking up. They were actually picking up all throughout the 2000s. It wasn't until this decade that they started to crash again. Gee, I wonder why. But Dreamwave was also dominating the scene at the bookstore. Their collections were selling like mad. They were making money. They were just wasting far more money than they were making. They stiffed writers and ended up being a big thing. So you can be in the position IDW's in and fuck things up without social justice politics, but certainly social justice politics doesn't hurt. So I want to take a look at this article over at Newsarama. And I'm quite certain they're going to ignore the actual problem. But let's take a look at it. Luke, I will throw this up in the chat if you want to put it up on screen. This article is entitled IDW for Sale. JP Morgan hired to review company and, quote, maximize stockholder value, unquote, by Chris Arnett, editor. IDW Media Holdings, Inc. has hired JP Morgan to help in a company review for a possible sale or other alternatives to, quote, maximize stockholder value and realize the full potential of its vast library and pipeline. IDW is the parent company of IDW Publishing. IDWM continues to build on its extensive library of widely followed and critically acclaimed graphic novels and comics, as well as its slate of current and planned television series, including some of the strongest and most innovative franchises in the industry, said company CEO Howard Jonas. I'm a little confused how they have television shows coming. Again, to the best of my knowledge, IDW doesn't own a thing. But we'll keep going. Maybe they'll explain this. As competition for audience continues to intensify on both traditional and streaming over the top platforms, IDW is well positioned to produce and feed stellar programming in domestic and international markets. That sentence said nothing, added Jonas. Consequently, we are working to extend our reach through our new strategic partnership while examining alternatives to realize the full value of IDWM's outstanding IP portfolio and pipelines. Again, that's a whole lot of nothing. Unless they, to the best of my knowledge, someone can correct me. Maybe they own something. What they do not own a fucking thing. They publish creator-owned and licensed comics. Again, not a bad business model. Dark Horse made a killing at that for a very long time. But I mean, what are you selling? The logo? What do they own other than the logo? Maybe some office space somewhere? I don't know. This comes a few weeks after representatives from ADW Capital Partners, who owns roughly a 9% stake in IDW, released a letter calling for the company to be acquired. Adam Whitten said the recent acquisition of Valiant Entertainment by DMG and Miller World by Netflix set a precedent for IDW's market value, especially given this company is larger as comic companies than those other two examples. Yeah, but Valiant owns things. Valiant has its own universe of heroes. Now, granted, I happen to think they all suck balls, but nonetheless, they actually own things. They're all kind of shitty, in my humble opinion, but I guess it's been around forever. I guess somebody buys that crap. But they own a shared universe of superheroes. Miller World, that's the company Mark Miller founded, and that's his creator-owned properties. There's something to buy there. I fail to understand what you possibly are buying at IDW. Other than rights to publish comics for all these things that you could have negotiated, at least when the contracts end, you could have negotiated with the parent companies that actually own those things. Look, it ain't like IDW owns Ghostbusters and Transformers and shit like that. They just own the rights to make comics on them, which they've managed to botch. This comes a few weeks. Okay, I read that article. IDW is in an enviable position as the fourth largest comic publisher by dollar share, Whitten said. We are consistently amazed by the quality of the company's leadership and its ability to source, incubate, and add to its growing library of content/intellectual property. According to Whitten, IDW owns or co-owns over 200 franchises. We're going to need some citation needed here. IDW CEO Chairman Howard Jonas said that the review process won't necessarily result in any, unless by co-own he means currently has the comic rights to. There can be no assurance that our review process will result in any transaction, said Jonas. We have not established a timetable for completion of the review process, and we do not intend to comment further on the process unless and until a transaction or other alternatives is approved by the board of directors. Our review process is concluded. We determine that further disclosure is appropriate. In recent years, both Boom Studios and Dark Horse Comics have sold portions of its company to outside investors to raise funds for product. Boom is another one that primarily does license stuff. One person has an interesting comment. He says the company has over $30 million in debt and no viable assets and no possibility of earning that money via their product. If they did, they would need to search for a buyer. Yeah, I don't understand where this whole, we have, we own all this stuff. You don't own a damn thing. This is an interesting comment. Tom Z says, doesn't IDW own that vampire thing that spawned Infestation? I think it's a zombie thing or something. I don't know. But there was a big storyline they did where some sort of book they have where like zombies are involved. Somehow in that book, I haven't read it in forever, and I only read bits and pieces of it. But the storyline was called Infestation. And basically, somehow a bunch of these zombies get shunted into all these different parallel universes. And there's parallel universes happen to be the different properties that IDW owns. So Star Trek, Ghostbusters, Transformers, G.I. Joe, etc. Ninja Turtles was involved, I think. So, and then the second one, Infestation storyline was like Cthulhu beings invading those universes. I actually haven't read a lot of that. I remember when it was going on. I've been trying to hunt down the 2 Ghostbusters issues just because I've been trying to hunt down all the Ghostbusters stuff, and that's, and I threw the Infestation thing up on my wish list on the off chance somebody wants to get the big omnibus of both those crossovers for me. But yeah, they might own that, but what the fuck is that? You know what I mean? Who cares? I don't think they own anything else, man. Again, stuff they have the rights to publish. 30 Days a Night. That's another one. I think of X-Files. They can publish X-Files comics. Stuff like that. But they don't own those things. They can just publish comics. You got the license. Now make some fucking comics that'll sell. And there's no reason you can't, other than incompetence. Here's another good example. So, of mismanagement. Ghostbusters, I guess, is next month is its 35th anniversary or something like that. Well, IDW is putting out 4 Ghostbusters one-shots. Again, we can't get a regular Ghostbusters comic, but we get miniseries and one-shots here and there. Fine, I'll take it. One is set in the regular Ghostbusters comic universe. Cool. Another one-shot is set in the real Ghostbusters, the animated cartoon universe. Another one is set in the universe of the Extreme Ghostbusters, which was like a 90s cartoon. And then a fourth one is set in the shitty 2016 Ghostbusters. So I very much look forward to buying 3 out of those 4 one-shots. Again, I can tolerate the shitty Ghostbusters when they're guest starring, but that's about it. They are doing a Ghostbuster Transformers comic here soon. It looks good. Where fucking Gozer invades Cybertron. Looks badass. I'm looking forward to that. Dave Rambo said something interesting. I can't confirm this. This is in the chat. IDW is majority owned by IDT Company, which in 2011 spun off of Matt Forney's favorite company, Genie Energy. The corporate culture in America, I don't know what the fuck we're going to do about this, man. Something needs to be fucking done. It's too tangled a fucking web anymore. The founder of IDT is Howard Jonas, who also founded Genie Energy. How about that? But like I said, IDW is in a position where they should be making tons of money. Okay, people like Transformers, people like Ghostbusters, people like Star Trek, people like G.I. Joe, people still like My Little Pony for fucking reasons I've never grasped. They should be in a position to do this. They should be in a position that they just make money. They just make money hand over foot. Oh, but the direct market, a lot of people don't want to go into comic book stores. So what? People go into bookstores, and there's a whole fucking row, stretching from one end of the building to another of trade paperbacks. Why isn't IDW selling trade paperbacks there? Or I'm sure they are, but why aren't they dominating it? I started reading the Ghostbusters comic with the Ninja Turtle crossover and got my interest peaked. And I then read shortly after that they had the crossover with the cartoon, and I read that and I thought, you know what, I need to go back and read this. And I think it was back in 2017 I finally, like, my local comic book store had all the trades, and I just started reading them straight through. Just here recently I got completely caught up. And it was great stuff, man. But a lot of this SJW nonsense, it just doesn't make money. People want to read a G.I. Joe comic. They don't want Snake Eyes replaced by a Hispanic woman. Nobody wants that. Nobody.
1 penny.
Sorry, I don't have a penny.
You don't have a penny? You don't have a single penny?
Somebody says, could a lot of the SJW and IDW have something to do with their influence? In parentheses, I guess you're referring to IDT. I don't know. I don't know. But I mean, again, speaking as a Ghostbusters fan, I'm willing to tolerate. I don't mind the 2016 Ghostbusters appearing as side characters because we've already established a multiverse thing. Okay, so that's part of the Ghostbusters multiverse, sure. And it's actually pretty funny because they shit on them all the time. Like they portray them as incompetent assholes. But why would you give them a spotlight? Why would you be like, let's just do an ongoing 2016 Ghostbusters comic? I mean, if you want to do an ongoing thing and set in one of the other universes, you could have done like real Ghostbusters. That would have brought in a lot of nostalgia people. Holy shit, that cartoon,
Is merely the latest to learn that where wokeness goes, brokenness is sure to fucking follow.
Exactly. And there are a shit ton, especially the crossovers of IDW comics I highly recommend. In fact, in my two geek Christmas buying guides, I recommend several of them. I'm like, oh, did you know someone who kind of likes Batman, kind of likes Ninja Turtles? Well, here's 4 fucking crossovers they did that are all good. I got a cousin of mine is a big Star Trek fan. Doesn't really read comics that often. He likes reading comics, but he's not a comic book geek like me, So I got him the Star Trek Planet of the Apes crossover for Christmas this past year. Like he finished reading that like that night and texted me about how awesome it was. Now that was a crossover between the IDW and Boom property, but the point was stands. I'm reading more IDW comics than I'm reading Marvel and probably DC right now. If you follow the Bechtloff on social media like Gab or Facebook or Twitter, you'll see every Wednesday I put out the picture of what I picked up, and it's usually only like 2, 3, or 4 books. But there you go. He says, did anyone watch the cancerous Simpson episode this past weekend where Itchy and Scratchy get gender swapped? I did not. I keep forgetting the Simpsons still exists. I keep wanting to forget the Simpsons still exist. I mean, I still watch Family Guy. Family Guy is usually still pretty entertaining, but Simpsons is sad, especially given the first 7 or 8 years of The Simpsons is probably at that point was the best thing that had ever been on television, in my humble opinion. It was fantastic. It was amazing. Early Simpsons is some of the best television in television history. And you compare that to what it is now, it's like watching an old relative that was so awesome and respectable suffer dementia. It's like, man, can somebody just put a pillow over this poor man's face and let him die with some dignity? Tom Z says it was horrific. The last scene had Bart spray painting the patriarchy is a wiener, no lie. I remember a couple years ago, Simpsons had been on for so fucking long. This was probably 2010-ish, 2011 maybe, something like that. Maybe 2009, but I want to say 2010. So I decided to give Simpsons another shot one Sunday night. And it started off really, really good. It started off with somehow Homer ends up becoming Krusty the Clown's assistant, and they have to go travel with Krusty, and Bart decides to come with him. And I'm like, wait a second, you're telling me this is a Homer hanging out with Krusty episode with Bart as Homer's sidekick? Well, that sounds fucking awesome. Maybe this show's gotten good again. And I'm sitting back like, all right, hot damn. And then we cut over to Lisa. Oh, no. Dude, even in Simpsons' heyday, a Lisa episode was a bad thing. And then we cut over to Lisa. Oh, looks like Luke had to duck out. So we cut over to Lisa. And then we follow Lisa as she goes to music camp and all the kids in music camp are voiced by the cast of Glee. And I'm like, you've never have you had me so hard, then lost me so hard, Simpsons. Holy shit. It won't die because it now serves as leftist propaganda. Yeah, but who the fuck watches it still? Does anybody still watch it? Ugh. So, like I said, that was the thing I wanted to talk about today. I know some of you were probably bored with this, the inside baseball comic book industry shit, but like I said, I just find it fascinating. You have a company that is publishing some of what they're publishing is the best stuff on the racks. They're publishing great creator-owned stuff. They have all these licenses, and they can't make money because they just keep cocking it up. Oh, we got a Ghostbusters license. Well, I know what the people want. They want 2016 Ghostbusters and not regular Ghostbusters. Oh, we got G.I. Joe license. I know what the people want. They want this Latinx to take Snake Eye's place. Oh, we got Transformers license. I know what the people want. They want autistic transgender robots. It says 30-year-old boomers watch Simpsons. Do they? I think us 30-year-old boomers have pretty much moved on to Family Guy. I can't stand watching it. Again, precisely because I remember when it was amazing. I remember when Simpsons was appointment television. I remember when you taped the new episode of Simpsons just so you could watch it multiple times throughout the week. Yeah, what Simpsons is now is fucking sad. I think the last time Simpsons has been entertaining there was a Family Guy crossover, which was actually a Family Guy episode, not a Simpsons episode. That was entertaining enough because it was sort of a celebration of the two franchises, and it was very, very funny. And the Simpsons did an episode where they crossed over with Futurama, which was entertaining more just because Futurama was... I don't know if I'd say Futurama was better than Simpsons at its prime. It was probably about equal footing, but if you average together the entirety of both series, Futurama definitely takes it by a country mile. So he says, watching a new episode of The Simpsons is like watching your dog die of rabies. It is exactly like that. I use the analogy of, watching an old elderly relative you love and respect die of dementia. It's just like, can somebody please put it out of its misery? Can somebody please end its suffering? All right, so we're going to wrap things up with a funny article. All right, folks. Some of you may or may not be familiar with BBC News/Pigeon. BBC News/Pigeon is this bizarre bullshit ebonics. Pardon me. It's this bizarre bullshit ebonics stuff over at the BBC. Now, speaking of things that need to be put out of its misery, the UK, everyone. Britain is a joke. Okay, we all see these memes where it's like, just recently I saw one where this female cop was and she's looking all proud in the picture. Look at all the scissors I confiscated from people, keeping everyone safe. And I'm like, how do you sleep at night? YouTube's terms of services will not allow me to say what I think that cop should do with the scissors. Let's just put it that way. Britain is a joke. It's a joke country. Okay. You need a license to jack your dick off. Meanwhile, rape gangs can have their way with your daughter and sister, and you're the bad guy if you don't like it. That's Britain. All right. That's Britain. If tomorrow I found out, I woke up to the news that Thanos finger snapped all of Britain away, I would say, well, I'm going to miss British James. But even British James, as he was turning to dust, would have been like, it's for the best, mate. So we have an article over here on the BBC News that I'm going to attempt to read. And keyword is attempt. So let's go ahead and screen share this because we have the technology. We can rebuild him. And share. And there we go, off into the infinite void. And here we go. Tiger nut drink fit wake up your sex drive, nutritionist. Sex drive, walla na one thing. Way they bring plenty plava between man and woman. People way sebi say day common this days among young people pass as a no day like before when people think say na only old people way they suffer am. Sake o say dia body done weak. The matter they very serious as many people will get this problem they die in silence because say them they shame to talk for outside. Jesus wept. But ye get one drink way they common, way they help people, way get this cane problem. The ingredients, Seth, no they cost plenty money. Oh, God. This is literally giving me cancer. It's giving me lung cancer. It's so bad. Where they cost plenty money and person fit make em for house. Tiger nut. Hasa they call em Aya. Aurora, they call him Oifo. And Ligbo, they call him Akihasa. And another name for him in Hasa de groundnut. Tiger nut milk. This milk is dedicated. Okay, well, this is actually in English. This milk is dedicated to all the fathers and fathers-to-be. We all know the health benefits of tiger nuts by now, but we missed one most important health benefit, most important part of the health benefits that men will love to hear. Tiger nuts help boost low sperm count in men and also help boost circulation, so bottoms up. Happy Father's Day. I want to reiterate, this is not written in a foreign language. Okay? This is written in Ebonics. One naturalist, Juliana Asaku, whatever, we done study how to use normal plants take cure sickness. Say true, this tiger nut they work if them prepare em well. She say nature done provide beta cure way fit people help way get this cane man and woman walala without any side effects. Many people done testify, say the juice of this drink, they gingered them well aside. They facts say day very sweet and day good for person health. So there we go, folks. I hope we all learned something. I hope we all learned something. That is a thing published in the BBC News. So he said, "Who let Jar Jar Binks write for the BBC?" So there we go. What do I even say to that? How am I even? How am I even supposed to make fun of that? Like, what do I even say? What can I possibly say that is funnier than it in and of itself? I'm at a loss. I'm speechless. So I think I may need to wrap this up for the day, folks. I hope you enjoyed this program. I hope we all learned a great deal. Hope we all had a great time. And if you enjoy the program, consider checking out the sponsor, Steve's Jerky, because Steve's Jerky is absolutely delicious. Great stuff. Great stuff. I see I got one dislike down here. Hi, Davis. And also, if you enjoy the show, do consider checking out the tip jars down below. We got the PayPal, Patreon, and Amazon wish list, which are all ways you can support the show. And hey, that IDW Infestation trade paperbacks on the wish list. Got to scoop that up while IDW is still printing them. It's actually a big omnibus. It collects both of those big crossovers. So, somebody says a non-Facebook way to get the jerky. You know what? I'll tell you what. I'm going to throw a link to the Discord in here. And go ahead and, if you haven't already, join the Discord. I know Steve is in the Discord. And he can probably help you out with that. I'm sure there are ways you can get a hold of him other than Facebook. I just don't necessarily want to be giving out the ways I have to get a hold of him because I don't know how much of that he wants out there publicly. Somebody says, Steve Jerky, while a good meat dried for you. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So there you go. All right, folks. Like I said, if you enjoy the show, do consider supporting the show. PayPal, Patreon, and Amazon wishlist, all ways to support the show. And of course, you can check out the sponsor. That makes him want to keep being the sponsor. So that's all we got for today, folks. I don't believe I will be doing a stream late night. As I said, my schedule has been in flux this week, and I know for a fact tomorrow I have to get up early. So yeah, that'll probably be it for today. I want to thank you all for listening, and Bechtloff out.